Welcome to Find the Intersection. Hey, we're starting a new week. It's a great opportunity to jump into our Bible reading plan. Today, we begin by reading the gospel passage of John 21, 1 to 19. And then tomorrow, we'll read Revelation chapter 5, verses 11 to 14. Wednesday, Acts 9, 1 to 6, and also 7 to 20. And Thursday, Psalm 30. And then on Friday, we will discuss the themes and intersections that run through all four passages. It's an amazing way to study the Bible. All right, so let's jump in on this Monday for John 21, 1 to 19. Now, this is a story of Peter's restoration. It's a story of catching fish, and it's in what a lot of people believe the very same spot that Jesus called Peter, James, and John in Luke chapter 5. And now they're back in after the resurrection. Peter has denied Jesus 3 times, and they're in the same spot. And what are they doing? They're fishing. So it's kind of like the story is going full circle. And I really like to think of this as the renewal of Peter's calling in the way that I look at this passage. Anyway, so let's jump into some few things that stood out to me today. There's a miraculous catch, 153 fish. And a lot of people speculate, what is that 153 fish? And I came across some interesting things in the commentaries. One is 153 is the number of nations at the time of John's writing. 153 is the number of kinds of known species of fish at the time. And 153 was the size of the local early Christian community, the early Christian church. But John Wesley said the number doesn't matter. There's simply enough fish to provide for the disciples as they began to share the gospel, which is a pretty cool idea. So I would like to say that the 153 symbolizes abundance. And so God's kingdom is about abundance. He provides more than enough for us. And this particular story is connected to the feeding of the 5,000 when God took just a small amount and multiplied it to be amazing. And again, there is bread and fish as a theme within this passage. So there's an abundance. And I'd like to say there's a difference between abundance and prosperity. Abundance is God provides more than enough to meet our needs. Prosperity is God provides more than enough for just me. And so there's a difference here, and abundance is a symbol of God's kingdom. He provides more than enough for us so that we can share with others. The second thing is the 3 questions that Jesus asked Peter in his response. The questions is, do you love me? And each time Peter says, yeah, I love you, and then feed my sheep. And so there's this kind of interaction 3 times. And it symbolizes the restoration of Peter, since Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And there's a renewal of Peter's calling here so that Peter can feed the sheep of Jesus. It's not just about catching fish. Catching fish would be symbolic of evangelism. Feeding the sheep would be a symbol of discipleship. So Peter is called to disciple the people that have been won into God's kingdom, the fish that have been caught. So it's a renewal of Peter's calling. And then the third thing, which I find is interesting, is that connection between do you love Jesus, then feed his sheep, or love his people, or love the neighbor. And so there's this connection between loving God and loving people. And it's very easy to forget about. You know, we want to love God, and we do these religious things to love God. But Jesus comes back to us, just like it came to Peter, and says, hey, love my people, love humanity. And so don't disconnect those 2 worlds, which I think is incredibly important for us to remember, that when we want to love God, we need to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. One cannot love God if he does not love his neighbor. Neighbor is also of God. Neighbor is created in the image of God. And so it's important for us to remember, and Peter needs to remember that too, that the people that he is ministering to is one way that he loves God and shows his love for God. So the application for me today, the next steps, is to ask myself the questions that Jesus asked Peter, or allow Jesus to ask me those questions. Paul, do you love Jesus? Yes. You know, and go through that whole situation, because there's times where I've rebelled against the calling of God in my life. And this is an opportunity to renew my calling and answering the questions. A little side note, Peter, when he responded to Jesus in the Greek, it was a little bit different. Jesus asked, "Do you agape me?" And Peter responds, "Well, yes, I phileo you." Well, agape is God's unconditional love. So Jesus asked, "Do you love me with your everything?" And Peter responds, "Yeah, I love you in brotherly love." And so there is a disconnect in Peter's as thinking, and there are many explanations for that. But the question that God asks us is, "Do you agape me?" And so that's a good question for us to wrestle with this morning. All right, that's all I got. So tomorrow we'll be back with Revelation chapter 5, verses 11 to 14 as we continue the intersection journey this week. I hope you have an amazing day. Stay dry out there. It's going to rain this week. Yep. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Grace and peace.